I'm here with Rutie Borthwick at her studio in East London, near Stratford. Hello, Rutie.
Hello.
Tell me about your work. So you originally graduated from
Slade last year. I did my MFA at the Slade, and then many years ago I did my BA at Chelsea College of Art. And for many years I was painting, and then I was also making secret installations, but
while you were painting.
While I was painting, but painting was a big focus.
And when you say secret, why were they secret? Weren't you ready?
Yeah.
For what you were doing at the time, or you?
Yeah, I think I was doing all these things that I wasn't taking seriously around my painting, and then when I got really focused on my painting was really focused and very kind of clean, and it got very pared down. And so then when I went to the Slade, it was just this wonderful space where I could try everything. So I basically was doing all these different things, performance. Near the beginning, I spent 4 days inside a roll of paper, and I just drew all around myself, and kind of lived all day inside these rolls of paper, so that and when I emerged from that, it was kind of a moment of rebirth, which sounds really weird now, but to think back on, because a lot of the work that I've been doing has been around birth and nurture, and basically the Slade gave me the space to grow, and that made me start thinking about nurture and where we can go to get what we need in life to grow a bit more.
Because you had been a painter for quite some time, and you know, to a certain extent you were quite accomplished, you know, technically, and in terms of the themes that you were painting. So when you were painting, was it a conscious decision that you needed to start afresh and start a new sort of research, and that made you go to the Slade, or what was the process that made you apply to the Slade?
It was many things. It was the fact that I did this residency in New York, and it just suddenly opened my eyes to how much I'd been craving input from other artists and a bit more of a community. And also just to get that feedback suddenly from other people, and to have a discussion about my work was just so freeing.
And that was in New York.
Yeah, that was.
How long was that experience?
That was a month in 2012. It was a month in SVA.
And were you doing painting during that residency?
Yeah, but I started to paint on sieves and fish bowls and things, as well as really focused my painting. It was really good. And
then you came back.
Yeah, and I'd met people from all over the world, and it made me think, this is what I need. I need to be around people that are making and talking about it and doing it, because I'd been on my own in the studio for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. But one of the things is quite interesting that you were saying, when you started at the Slade and you wrapped yourself and you were in this tube, and it feels like you needed to feel things physically.
Yeah.
And was it something that you weren't getting from painting?
Yeah.
And you needed to have more of a bodily contact with the materials?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That's exactly what I needed. I needed that thing that happens in the brain when you touch something. I needed that physical awareness to be part of the work. And being inside that tube was a place where I was reconnecting with that, because I was dancing every week for a few years, and at the Slade I was able to bring all these different elements in. And before there was paintings, there was people in the paintings, and then I brought the viewers into the work and started to get people to be part of it, to feel the work, and that was really important. And now that's exactly where my work is still reaching out in.
So from that point you were saying of connection with yourself physically, and also getting the viewer to participate in what you do, to what extent do you think what you do is also a performance?
Oh yeah, it is a performance.
And is that conscious when you are making the work, when you are exhibiting the work? Do you have that in the back of your mind, wanting people to interact? How do you?
Yeah, I think I can't get away from performance. I think I naturally like to perform, but I make my objects perform for me a lot of the time. And very often I delight in the how should I say, the not obvious performance.
So more of a subtle.
Yeah. So for the Slade degree show, I did this big red tube. It was 80 meters that climbed the whole of the Slade building and went into the moat, and then went round the whole building into my room that I was showing works in, and that was really performing on a large scale. But also, what I delighted in was I had to physically crawl through the whole 80 meters in order to fill up each balloon, to blow it up, and I had to do this physical endurance, but it was in this weird kind of pit of a stage, and people were around me installing, coming into the Slade, and seeing this thing grow.
and that's the work that I saw and I got to know you. Was because in itself it was quite ambitious piece of work, and amazing, and that led me to invite you to exhibit at Cabin Gallery. How was your experience about creating the space of Cabin, which is an intimate space, which to a certain extent is more manageable than obviously the Slade, which was a much bigger building?
Yeah, I think I really relished it, to be honest. I think after doing something that was so ta-da on a stage, kind of shouting at the world, with also a room of quiet, intimate moments, but in Cabin you can do something. I basically decided that because it was so small, the space, compared to, I was just going to fill it up and make that kind of bulbous energy be in a small confined space, so you really would feel it physically. And I think what has worked about the show is the fact that you have to really be aware of your body and negotiate the space, because there's kind of overwhelming, the big umbilical cord that wraps around in it. So I was really aware of that when we were planning what I was going to show, and I made a mock-up of it in the studio.
So you've created, the size of the gallery in your studio, so you could have a sense of how things would fit, more or less. The other piece of work that you have on show is the limited edition of these handkerchiefs that they have, various representations of nipples in various, methods of painting. You have, in some cases, you have embroidery and stitching, and it was one of the things that I found quite intriguing in your work that you've done is you use the nipple. Tell me more about it. What's fascinating for you?
Well, I think the nipple, is a very interesting part of the body because it's acceptable for people to look in magazines and to look in TV, and you can have a really small bikini, but to see a woman's nipple, it's either airbrushed out or it becomes this sexual object, and yet the nipple is where the breast milk comes from, and it's this place of nurture. And then you have men with these nipples that have the potential for nurture, but it never gets realised because men don't breastfeed. And so I've just been really interested in this part of the anatomy and isolating it away from breasts and away from breastfeeding. It becomes this weird object, and people have a lot of associations about it, and I really enjoy that. I really enjoy. And
because during the private view at Cabin, one of the things that you and I had was we had these small models of nipples that we were showing people.
Yeah.
And people obviously found it quite amusing and weird. But it reminds me of a project that you told me you did, that you photographed a series of men nipples. So what was that project about? Because was it the beginning of the exploration?
Yeah, it was the conscious beginning of the exploration. So I started to photograph all 20 male nipples of men I knew, and then I painted them on these little wooden kind of nubbin things, and I put them all up on the wall. I had one that was made out of synthetic clay, just to give it a different kind of idea about, just to break up the harmoniousness of it all. But also each nipple, it was so interesting how different colours they are, how different, parts of the nipple are exaggerated in other people than other people, and it's really fascinating. And
that comes me to ask you about how important are the materials in your work, because the nipples they were in that sort of resin, synthetic clay.
Yeah.
The tummies, the pregnant tummies you have in the gallery, they have that sort of baby grow material feel, and obviously use balloons. Well, to a certain extent, how does a material change how you work, or do you look for a specific material? What's your process?
Well, the material is really important. With the pregnant walls, they came from a whole series of exploration into which kind of fabric people are most likely to touch without being asked to. So it looks like I want to touch it. So it makes such a big difference for the viewer if they're touching something and then they realise they're touching something, and then they have this moment of, am I allowed to touch it? And that whole process is basically what I want to activate. So I really made these pregnant walls out of the softest baby material that they make babies' toys out of. It's called Cuddle Soft Felt Boa, and it's just, you just want to put your face onto it, and people do.
Yes, and we could see that on the private view and throughout the exhibition. Yeah. So at the moment, are you working on any projects for the futures, the After Cabin? Do you have any? Yeah,
so I won this award, which I won for my degree show, called the Adrian Carruthers Award with Acme Studios. So I have a free studio for a year, and it's amazing. It's really big.
And it's an amazing studio.
Yeah, and at the end of the year, which is next September, we're going to have a show, me and 3 other people that won the award. So that's what I'm working towards, and I've just kind of thinking of ideas and also applications as one does as an artist.
Well, thank you very much, Rutie, for the interview.
Thank you.
Rutie Borthwick show at Cabin finishes on the 30th of January.